The next morning, Shawan left the estate with an expensive gift in one hand and a rolled rattan in the other. Everyone assumed she regretted her actions and was now leaving to bring Jishumo back. Jishumo heard the news from his spies, and so waited patiently for her arrival. Unfortunately for him, Shawan never showed up at the G estate. She had instead left to see the Grand Tutor, intending to repent and ask for forgiveness. Morning court had just finished, and Grand Tutor Ning was returning to her estate with Princess Xie. Shawan had been waiting for some time. She immediately stepped forward to pay her respects when she saw them return. The Grand Tutor frowned at the sight. Xiao Yurong had been excited when she told her about Shawan's change of heart. Grand Tutor Ning was unconvinced. In her mind, Shawan was rotten and irredeemable, so she never imagined that Shawan would show up at her doorstep so soon. Grand Tutor Ning pretended not to know what was going on.
"Miss Xiao, what's the matter?"
Grand Tutor Ning, I was a recalcitrant child, and I caused you a great amount of trouble. I wanted to apologize and accept whatever punishment you deem fit. Gracious Grand Tutor Ning, please, forgive me for my stupidity before and allow me to be your student again. Shawan flipped the hem of her robe and knelt down in front of Grand Tutor Ning. With her head down, she raised the gift she had so carefully prepared earlier. I especially picked out this ink set for Grand Tutor Ning. Hopefully, Grand Tutor likes it. The ink bed was made out of beautifully marbled glossy stone that was mined only in Eastern way. Its ability to retain heat meant ground ink remained pliable for longer, so fine ink was created quickly and easily. The ink stick that came with it was high quality as well and quite expensive. Grand Tutor Ning glanced at it. Though her heart raced, she maintained a cold expression. "Miss Zhao, you know that I am in charge of creating the questions for the exams. Are you trying to use this ink set to bribe me?" Not for a minute did Grand Tutor Ning believe Shawan was sincere about learning. She was positive Shawan was trying to use her to get the exam questions. Grand Tutor Ning was an honest, scrupulous official. This type of ploy would never work on her. Unfortunately, in her previous life, Shawan had indeed been foolish enough to try to buy the test. She spent a huge fortune and painstakingly memorized the answers. But her efforts were wasted. The questions she purchased weren't on the test. She had been swindled. The topics she had worked so hard to memorize were worthless. So when it came time to take the exam, she was lost. All she could do was hand in a blank sheet of paper. Her memory of the test itself was vague, but it was enough to give her a good idea of the questions. Very importantly, she distinctly remembered what would not be on the test. The exam itself had two parts, the written and the oral. Shawan was familiar with the former, but had no idea about the latter. She never reached that part, having failed early on at the written component. The oral was proctored by the Empress and reserved for those that scored the highest. The questions from the imperial exam were actually based on the 4 books and 5 classics, and 2 of the major topics were on politics and decorum education, 2 things she had no familiarity with. To be ready, Shawan would have to study hard and be an overnight success before the 1st of September. Grand Tutor Ning misunderstands. I was not trying to bribe you. I really am sincere in my desire to learn. I've turned over a new leaf. Please, give me a chance. Shawan's ridiculousness had left a deep imprint on Grand Tutor Ning, so much so that she wasn't moved in the least by Shawan's act. She looked coldly at Shawan as she spoke. If Ms. Zhao wishes to take it upon herself to remain kneeling, then it is not my concern. However, I will have to ask Ms. Zhao to find a more qualified teacher. In fact, Grand Tutor Ning had gotten over the bad experience with Shawan and Xiao Yurong, but that didn't mean she was willing to lend a hand to raise up the incompetent girl in front of her. The idea made her whole body uncomfortable and left her with a bad taste in her mouth. Not to mention, her relationship with her good friend would once again turn sour. Honorable Grand Tutor, please give me a chance. I truly am sincere. Does the ancient text not say everyone makes mistakes, and to correct oneself after a mistake is good? I've come to realize how foolish I was. It's unbearable how many mistakes I've made. Correcting errors once discovered, isn't that a good thing? Why does Grand Tutor insist on clinging to my past mistakes and refuse to give me a second chance? Xiaowang lifted her head up. She vowed, I won't disappoint Grand Tutor Ning again. Xiaowang's articulate words surprised the Grand Tutor. She looked at the earnest face in front of her and wondered if perhaps Xiao Yurong had coached her on what to say. After thinking for a moment and muttering to herself, the Grand Tutor came up with a way to force Xiaowang to retreat. If Miss Zhao truly wishes to accept punishment, then I would be willing to accept that you are sincere. 2 hours. If you can kneel for a full 2 hours, then I will accept you as my student and teach you everything I know. In her heart, Grand Tutor Ning was derisive. Xiaowan was a pampered and spoiled good-for-nothing. With that delicate skin of hers, she wasn't going to last even half that time. So who would have expected Xiaowan to happily knock her head to the ground in a grateful kowtow?
Many thanks to Grand Tutor for this opportunity. Grand Tutor Ning was caught by surprise, her brows knit in a tight furrow of confusion. By forcing Xiaowan to kneel in public, Grand Tutor Ning had planned to use Xiaowan's arrogance against her. Never mind half an incense's time, Xiaowan wouldn't last a minute. Grand Tutor Ning had an incredibly poor opinion of Xiaowan. But after all the many prison beatings and the one grueling walk to the execution ground, Xiaowan's pride and mind had hardened and become as tough as nails. She straightened her back and brought out the rattan mat to kneel on. Yunya and Huasa were stunned. They were about to follow suit and kneel down next to their mistress when Xiaowan stopped them and told them to rest in the shade. It was an odd scene for passers-by to witness. Xiaowan's 2 servant girls were relaxing in the shade, while she, a well-known arrogant heir, was kneeling on top of a rattan mat in front of the Grand Tutor's house. How weird was that? A crowd formed and people began gossiping as they pointed at Xiaowan. 2 hours. It was noon and the midday sun was fierce. She barely knelt for more than a minute and there was already a sheen of sweat on her cheeks. Huasa didn't like Xiaowan, but she wasn't going to kick her mistress while her mistress was down. Mistress, the sun is too much. Kneeling for 2 hours? It's not good for the body. Let's return home. The madam will know how to convince Grand Tutor Ning. Xiaowan shook her head. She couldn't depend on her mother's protection forever. Besides, Grand Tutor Ning wasn't the kind of person her mother could sway with just a few words. The only way to move Grand Tutor Ning was with sincerity. Maybe Xiaowan was unlucky, or maybe the gods didn't like her, but the clouds dispersed and she was left to bear the brunt of the sun directly. The ground scalded against her skin, even through the mats, and the heat reflected up at her body. Yunya and Huasa, with their expert martial arts, could feel the oppressive heat even in the shade. Never mind the incompetent martial arts dabbler Xiaowan. The heat was taking its toll on Xiaowan. Her body weakened and was dripping with sweat. She swayed and nearly teetered on the brink of collapse several times, but she persevered, refusing to fall. She suddenly remembered Xie Chuchen. How, despite still recovering from the abortion, he had knelt for 5 days in the scorching summer heat to ask for help on her behalf. Thinking about it made her eyes burn and tears spill out. Grand Tutor Ning was disgusted when she saw Xiaowan's silent tears. It wasn't even half an incense, and the girl was already crying. So spoiled. Grand Tutor Ning was not going to withdraw over some tears. She knew Xiaowan wouldn't be able to do it. She wasn't going to wait around, so she dusted her sleeves and went inside. A distressed Princess Xie looked at Xiaowan. She tried to help her cousin up, but Xiaowan remained kneeling and refused to budge. Afraid her cousin would injure herself, Princess Xie quickly ran after the Grand Tutor, intending to plead on her cousin's behalf. Grand Tutor Ning thought Xiaowan had given up and asked Princess Xie to put in a few good words for her. Grand Tutor Ning raised her eyebrows. If you can't stand it, then give up. I won't be able to explain it to your mother if you hurt yourself. Xiaowan straightened her spine. I can endure it." Her eyes were bright and clear. "It is only kneeling for 2 hours. I can handle this kind of hardship. I hope Grand Tutoring will keep your word. If I complete kneeling for the 2 hours, then Grand Tutoring will accept me as a student." The newly reborn Shawan wasn't a spoiled and pampered young miss. Bitterness? She would eat it. Weariness? She would endure. She only asked for one thing in this life, and that was to be able to protect the Shao house.